Good morning, Warriors. It's your boy Garrett J. White, the Master Coach Mentor, coming at you with a little wake-up wad. Today's message is going to be to the point. Yesterday, if you were following along with the wake-up wad, I was hit a bit of mental and physical implosion with what I was up to with Ironman training and what I got going down with joining the CrossFit competition team at the CrossFit box I go to, CrossFit Ethos. And the fact was, both of these were just too fucking much. And the point I made yesterday's wake-up wad was, you can have it all, but you can't do it all. And see, there's a price to be paid for physical fitness. There's a price to be paid for making money, price to be paid for having a marriage that's on fire, for having a family life that is focused and committed. There's a price to be paid for all this. And what you've got to make a determination is are you ready to pay the price? Because see, with every price that you pay, there is a cost that you experience. For every price you don't pay, there is a cost that you experience. Some call this the law of cause and effect, the law of karma, the law of harvest, which is what I do today and what I do even right this minute running, or right here even doing this video with you. There's a price that has to be paid for me to create this shit, to do these videos, to run, to work out, to market, to build a business, to take my wife out on date night. All of this has a price that has to be paid, and with it, a linked associated cost, meaning I lose out on something while I'm doing this thing. So fitness is a weird deal because I tend to be super extreme with my fitness, and there's a price that I'm willing to pay, but then there's a cost that I experience. And one of the costs that I experience with really intense training is fatigue. Now, fatigue's an interesting deal, right? Because we experience fatigue in our marriage. We experience fatigue in our parenting. We experience fatigue in our fitness. We experience fatigue in our marketing. We experience fatigue in managing our personnel. We experience fatigue with our clients. See, fatigue is nothing more than pushing your stress levels and what's known in the physical body as threshold. And threshold is that place, that point, right? So like if this line right here in the sidewalk, right here, if this line itself was threshold, on one side of that line, up to that point, is all the manageable energy I can put out. The minute I cross over to the other side of that line known as threshold, I begin to tax my reserve systems. And in running, for example, you can only tax that system so long before the body releases what's known as lactic acid. And literally the physical body programmed by the mind begins to tell you, hey, this shit's got to stop. And your muscles start to shut down and your body starts to shut down, trying to sustain and save life. Your mind's saying, listen, we've hit threshold. We're at threshold and we have passed threshold, and you keep going. Now, here's the catch-22. In order to get faster in running, in order to get better at marketing, in order to become more powerful as a parent, in order to become more ripped in fitness, in order to have more than what you currently have, you've got to be willing to push to threshold and push past threshold and be able to hold past threshold for periods of time, right? And so as you push past threshold and you get comfortable with it, and then you bring yourself back across threshold, what ends up happening is that line right there will actually lengthen. And right now my threshold might be here, but if I keep training, I expand my threshold to another line from where I was before. Now this expansion is increased capacity. This is why somebody can get out and run a 12-minute mile, while another person can go out and run a 5-minute mile. The only difference is not the distance run, but the capacity of the runner. And so you and I are faced every single day with these challenges, which is how do we push past threshold? We have thresholds with how much money we make. We have thresholds with how much happiness we can experience before we start to have that lactic acid of the mind release and shut us down. Yet we've got to get comfortable with the idea of pushing into and past that painful place called threshold in order to expand. So what do you do, and what does this have anything to do with this whole fitness thing I'm facing? The cost that I'm experiencing by pushing in the threshold, by training for both of these epic games of hard ass 90 minutes to 2 hours of CrossFit every day, another hour or 2 hours of Ironman training every day, is that it was affecting my marriage. It was affecting my children. It was affecting my business. It fatigued my mind so that I lost capacity in my business and other areas. Now, if all I gave a shit about was being fit, okay, no problem. But there was a cost that I was experiencing that was not okay with me, which was dealing with my marriage and dealing with my children and dealing with my business, which I give a shit about too. And so the only person in your life who has the right to set the standard for you on when you're pushing past threshold and not is you. You can hire coaches, mastermind partners. You can have a parent or a spouse say, hey, you should probably think about doing this. You should do this game. You should play this way. You should do this thing. All of this, right? But at the end of the day, the only person who's going to know if they push to the max is who? You. See, your story about your threshold and where you're at comes down to you. Nobody fucking told me to do Ironman and nobody told me to do CrossFit Comp. I made those decisions, but at the end of the day, I have to be responsible for the cost of the price that I'm paying. In your life, brother, you've got to set the standard. You cannot sit around and wait for the world to dictate the standard. And when you know it's time for you to contract a little bit because you've pushed too long in the threshold and the consequences are too great in other areas, it's time for you to pull back. And at that point, don't be ashamed of it. Don't be ashamed of it. But at the end of the day, you'll know whether or not you're being a pussy or whether or not you ultimately are getting what you want. And in yesterday's video, I said the same thing I'll say in today's, which is if you're not clear about what you want, it makes it really difficult to know how far into the threshold you can push. So what's my decision? I'm gonna go back to normal CrossFit workouts and I'm gonna train for Ironman, and I'm not gonna train with the CrossFit Comp team. All right, doesn't mean that I don't love CrossFit. It just means right now I'm unwilling to experience the cost of paying the price in both those modalities of training as intensely as I am. Still gonna do CrossFit 3 to 4 times a week, but then train my ass off for Ironman Coeur d'Alene in June. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. This is Garrett J. White signing off, reminding you the power in today's marketplace of modern day warrior comes down to the simple formula of authenticity. Be real, get raw, and stay relevant with a ruthless commitment to creating big ass results today.